The top business stories live from the Sky newsroom. The fifth and sixth largest economies on the planet, the UK and India, strike a critical trade deal. From cars to whiskey, we'll take a look at what British goods are affected by the deal. Plus, the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to meet Donald Trump in the next couple of minutes at the White House. We'll be live. Yeah, very good afternoon and welcome to Business Live on this Tuesday with me, Darren McCaffrey. Well, this is the scene at the White House this afternoon where we're expecting Mark Carney, the newly elected Canadian Prime Minister, to arrive anytime soon with his first meeting with Donald Trump as US President, first meeting, of course, as Prime Minister of Canada. And in the last couple of minutes, we've had a post on Truth Social from Donald J. Trump, in which he says, "I look forward to meeting the new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. I very much want to work with him, but cannot understand one simple truth. Why is America subsidising Canada by $200 billion a year, in addition to giving them free military protection and many other things? We don't need their cars, we don't need their energy, we don't need their lumber, we don't need anything they have other than their friendship, which hopefully we will always maintain. They, on the other hand, need everything from us." The Prime Minister will be arriving shortly, and that will be most likely my only question of consequences. So this is the scene live outside the Oval Office with quite a punchy social media truth posting there from Donald Trump. Let's bring in James Matthews, our US correspondent, who is there. And James, this social media post in the last couple of minutes giving a sign of the tension, to put it lightly, between these two ahead of this meeting.
Yeah, hi, Darren. Yeah, I mean, the tension has long existed, hasn't it, between this pair? And I suppose he does set out an agenda that could lead to further deterioration. I mean, much talk has been, prior to them coming together, about a reset and just bedding down, settling down relations between the two. They have lowered expectations on both sides, lowered expectations of what could come of this meeting, but also of the kind of spectacle that may be produced from two leaders of two countries between which there is a considerable rift. So I don't think this is going to help in terms of settling Mark Carney, who's due to arrive here in the next few minutes. He comes here for what is a high-stakes meeting for both men, actually, but particularly for Mark Carney. Canada, 75% thereabouts of its exports come to the United States. He has spoken of an existential threat from these trade tariffs, also from Trump talking about annexing Canada as the 51st state. So as things stand right now, the US tariffs threaten to seriously undermine the Canadian economy. And that's the position Mark Carney finds himself in. Aggressive, elected, don't forget, on a ticket of being the man who can stand up to Donald Trump. And that will be the question of this meeting. Certainly in Canada, we elected you to stand up to Donald Trump. Go in there, stand up to him, be on the front foot, be robust and belligerent, and yet emerge from this meeting and others. It won't all turn on 15 minutes inside the Oval Office, but emerge from this relationship, build it to the extent that Canada is protected and that economically we are ring-fenced. It's difficult. I mean, he is in a tricky position, made trickier by the sentiment of Donald Trump there. He clearly is in robust mode, Donald Trump, ready for a fight, it would appear, a fight with a man who has talked tough up until now. But as I say, Dan, he's due to appear here shortly. There will be the Oval Office meeting. That we should get live picture of that, and thereafter the two will meet formally over lunch.
Fascinating stuff, James. I know you covered the Canadian election. What an extraordinary election that was. And as you say, robust, aggressive, that latest social media post from Donald Trump. It will be a fascinating meeting, and we will return to you, James, as soon as it begins. Thank you. Now, let's turn to the other big story today, and that is that the government have announced a trade deal with India in a move they claim will add £4.8 billion to the UK's economy and slash Indian tariffs on products like whiskey, cosmetics and medical devices. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the deal reflected the ambitions of the two nations.
This is the biggest trade deal that we, the UK, have done since we left the EU, and it's the most ambitious trade deal that India has ever done. And this will be measured in billions of pounds into our economy and jobs across the whole of the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Modi and I decided in Brazil last year that we would move at pace in relation to these negotiations. We've done that in a serious way, in a pragmatic way, and we're able to show that that's what delivers results.
And that was the Prime Minister speaking a little earlier. Join us now as our business and economics correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan. Very good afternoon to you. This is a significant deal in the sense that it's the UK's biggest, isn't it, post-Brexit?
That's right, Darren, the biggest since Brexit. And I think there's definitely been a growing impetus to get a deal done since we've seen growing protectionism from the United States and the shift we've been seeing in the global economy as a result of that. This has been 3 years in the making, but we've now got our breakthrough moment. And there were round-the-clock negotiations over the past couple of days to get this over the line. Well, what does that deal actually entail? It's worth pointing out that Britain and India were both coming from very different starting points. India's is a highly protectionist economy. Their average tariff floats at around 130%. By comparison, the UK's economy is very open. Our tariff rate hovers at around 5%. So there were some very big wins available to UK exporters when it comes to the Indian economy, a rapidly growing economy, one where consumers are growing increasingly powerful. And the government will point to considerable concessions. So there were tariff reductions on 90% of tariff lines. 85% of them will fall to zero within the coming decade. And some big name prizes, like whiskey, for example. India's never budged on its 150% tariff on whiskey, but it's budged on it for the UK. That rate will come down to 75% within the decade. So a win for the UK there. But of course, there are trade-offs involved. For the Indians, they've managed to secure tariff reductions for 99% of product lines. That includes textiles and apparel, which is a big employer in India. So again, for the Indians there, and also on visas. So while Britain hasn't changed its immigration policy, it said it would facilitate access for Indian professionals to use existing routes. And there have also been changes to taxation. So Indians in the UK and Britons in India won't have to pay national insurance for 3 years to avoid them paying double taxation effectively. And that was a big win for the Indians as well. So wins on both sides. The UK government estimates that this could add 4.8 billion to the UK economy in the long run. That's per year. And there are still negotiations that are ongoing for an investment treaty that hasn't got over the line just yet.
OK, Gurpreet, thank you very much indeed. Live there in Westminster. Well, let's get a reaction out of India now. Delighted to say we're joined by Mohit Mittal, who is the Senior Director and Co-Head of Investment Research at Acuity Knowledge Partners. A very good afternoon to you. What's been the reaction in India? It's obviously been presented by Prime Minister Modi as a victory, but it's been a long time in the making.
Indeed. Thank you for having me. It has been a long time in making, 3 years, and that also sheds some light on some of the current discussions that are happening in the US, when everybody is expecting new trade deals to happen every hour, but it takes some time. So it's a reality check as well for everyone. But as far as India is concerned, I think the momentum is very positive. Very positive from two perspectives. Number one, very political reasons for Narendra Modi government is the taxation relief that has happened, the social security relief that has happened. That has been a big cause of uproar internally. People have been talking about what can be done on that case, wherein people from India are going to Britain for a short-term duration and still have to pay social security. So that's a good political win for India. Secondly, India has been trying to project itself as a substitution for China. And with increasing issues of US-China, I think India is establishing itself as a good trade partner for the world to come in, and it opens gates for the EU negotiations. Keep in mind, EU negotiations are also on, so it opens gates for EU negotiations and a trade deal there as well.
Mohit, that's the interesting thing here, isn't it? As you talked about the global context there, that, you know what, with the trade relationship with the United States uncertain, both the UK and India seem to have spotted an opportunity or kind of forced slightly harder to take advantage maybe of an opportunity.
Well, it can be seen at both ways because it took 3 years to make this happen. But I think the timing is fantastic. I don't know if the officials rushed to make a point there, but definitely timing is really good. It does open up opportunities. And I think it's a good signal to the entire world that economies have to come together rather than grow apart to grow overall their own economies. So it's a good suggestion and good message overall to the global economy.
Mohit, you talked there about the tax arrangement being particularly important for Indians. It's been criticised by the Conservative opposition here in the UK today, saying that it's not a good deal for Britain. Clearly, obviously, as you say, the Indian government are happy with that compromise. What about the downsides for India? Every trade deal has got downsides, hasn't it? What does this mean for whiskey makers and car makers? Where are the downsides from your point of view?
Well, as a gin lover, I would welcome this deal. But overall, there are definitely downsides. It's going to have an impact on the Indian manufacturers. But keep in mind, India is a huge market when it comes to consumerism. And the global players have been doing well, but Indian whiskey makers and IMFL have also been doing extremely well. So it's not going to hit a lot. It's not going to pinch a lot in India from the perspective of Britain, whiskeys and gin becoming a little cheaper. But the overall impact on India in terms of increasing trade, a lot of the textile industry is going to get a huge boost. And as we all know, textile is one of the largest employers in India.
OK.
It's a two-sum game.
Indeed. Live for us there in India. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to go straight to the House of Commons. We're hearing from the Trade Minister, Douglas Alexander, who is indeed talking about this very deal.
Trade deal ever agreed by India in its history. From day one of this deal coming into force, it will make trade between our countries cheaper, easier and quicker. UK exports will benefit from much lower tariffs across a whole host of different sectors, including those we are prioritising in our industrial strategy. It means simplified customs processes for businesses in advanced manufacturing, in aerospace, in food and beverages, and in our creative sectors too, which will benefit from improved copyright protection. And for our world-leading financial and professional services companies, this deal locks in access to India's fast-growing market. It will ensure that UK banks and finance companies are placed on an equal footing with Indian suppliers. It also encourages the recognition of professional qualifications so that UK and Indian firms can access the right talent at the right time, whether they are in Mumbai or indeed in Manchester. This deal will unlock new opportunities for businesses in every part of the United Kingdom. Our advanced manufacturing companies in the North East, our iconic Scottish whisky brands, and our car plants in the West Midlands. In all, we will have secured over £400 million in tariff reductions in the first year alone, doubling to around £900 million after just 10 years. Crucially, the deal we've negotiated will also provide bespoke support for SMEs to enter the Indian market alongside a firm commitment from India to address the trade barriers that these businesses face. Since taking office, we committed to hardwiring the views and interests of small businesses into everything we do, and the deal we have negotiated is evidence of that. For the very first time, British businesses will have guaranteed access to India's vast procurement market, covering goods, services and construction. They will be able to bid for approximately 40,000 tenders worth at least £38 billion a year. The deal that we have just got over the line, Madam Deputy Speaker, is further proof that this government is using the power of international trade and investment to raise living standards here at home. Indeed, experts predict that it will boost our bilateral trade by some £25.5 billion. It is also projected to increase UK wages by £2.2 billion each year, while adding nearly £5 billion to our GDP over the long run. And we have done all of this while defending stoutly the UK's national interest. We've brokered a deal that protects our NHS and upholds our high food standards. It ensures that our points-based immigration system remains unaffected. This deal demonstrates our commitment to both workers and businesses, staying true to our values, to labour values, while contributing to our primary mission of economic growth. Now, I recognise, of course, that this House will need time to scrutinise this deal before the ratification process. My department will follow the process set out in the Constitutional Reform and Governance Act 2010 in sharing the finalised treaty text with honourable members. The House will, of course, have the opportunity to scrutinise any legislation associated.
There we go. That is Douglas Alexander, the Trade Minister, talking about that trade deal with India, the biggest the UK has signed since Brexit. Apparently, according to the government, it's going to provide a £5 billion boost. Well, let's have a look at what the impact will be on the car industry. Bring in Ian Plummer, who is the Commercial Director at Auto Trader. Ian, a very good afternoon to you. Just listening to the government there. Just first of all, before we get into the impact this deal might have, just spell out what the trading relationship is between India and the UK when it comes to cars.
Limited, to be honest, at the moment. There's a very low level of exports coming out of the UK into India. It's a decimal point percentage of our overall car exports. So I think the good news is we start from a low base and there's only opportunity to go forwards. The direction of travel in the other way is a little bit more open. And the right-hand drive vehicles from India are able to come into the UK as vice versa. So there is an opportunity, no doubt, to build from.
There definitely is, and we know there's a long history, particularly with Tata's involvement in UK manufacturing. Is this a deal from your point of view that is going to work better for the UK in terms of the car industry? Isn't, there is a population of 1.4 billion Indians. Not all of them can afford a car, but increasing numbers can.
Well, the middle classes of India are growing fast in number and purchasing power. So I think there's an absolute yes to that question. I saw recently that the Indian country accounts for, I think, a third place in the list of billionaires in the world. So there are plenty of people able to afford the very high-end products that we're brilliant at producing here in the UK as well. Whether you look at the likes of Rolls-Royce produced down in Goodwood, or the Bentley plant and so on as well. So whether you're talking about Aston Martin's even produced over here, JLR product, obviously linked back to that Tata Motor Group. So there's plenty of opportunity I'd have suggested for the higher end product, hopefully equally for the likes of your Minis and your Qashqais produced at the Oxford and Nissan Sunderland plants respectively.
And this couldn't come at a more crucial time, of course, for the UK car industry following the imposition of those tariffs from the United States.
Well, the industry's in the eye of the storm right now, isn't it? I think everybody's feeling the pressure of the turbulence in the global markets caused by the actions over in the US and the closing of what is a huge market for many OEMs, manufacturers to export into. So anything that can give them a ray of positivity to mitigate some of those risks of negative impacts on the US exports of those car brands out there is great. We saw today Ford announced a $1.5 billion impact that they're expecting on their operating profits this year. Many manufacturers last year gave their quarterly results, but suspended guidance for the rest of the year with the uncertainty. So anything with clarity, certainty, and a positive trajectory to it, which is what we're seeing here, is to be welcomed. In
saying that, Ian, sorry to end maybe on a slightly more negative note, but this is not going to see the return of mass manufacturing of cars here in the UK, isn't it? I mean, in essence, the UK car industry has become kind of quite niche and quite high ends. That may well thrive, but ultimately the idea that we're going to go back to what the industry was like in the 50s, 60s and 70s simply isn't going to happen.
I'm not so sure it was great during the 50s, 60s, 70s. There's a lot of volumes being
was
produced.
It good?
I think it was doing very well in the noughties and the early 10s, rising towards record numbers of cars produced and a very healthy industry. Hit negatively by Brexit, of course, but I think at that point we were seen as a very useful bridge for the Japanese in particular into Europe. today, we would be seen as that for the Chinese manufacturers that are increasingly looking to export their excellent electric vehicles and so on. That could be the case. You never know for the Indian producers we're talking about, who could come here in bigger numbers and create more jobs. But I think we need to have better connections with the other markets that we're nearest to if we really be able to become that bridge into the bigger opportunity.
Interesting. Well, there is that reset. We've heard that word many times, but a big summit with the EU coming up in mid-May. For the time being, Ian Plummer there from Auto Trader. Thank you very much. Let's bring in William Bain, Head of Trade Policy at the British Chambers of Commerce. William, first of all, your reaction to this afternoon's news.
We welcome this deal. We've supported it for quite some time. We know that tariffs matter in trade. We're seeing the world's two largest economies increase tariffs dramatically. Today is an important commitment to free trade by two of the world's largest other economies, and it will help industries from automotive to food and drink. Creates also a platform of stability to increase our bilateral investment with each other and also to grow our services trade for the future as well.
And you talk there about the potential upsides of this trade deal. We just talked about cars. We note, of course, that you're in Scotland, and one of the big winners may well be the Scottish whisky industry.
Well, indeed. I mean, tariffs have been very high for Scotch and gin into the Indian market, falling instantly by about half, and with big prospects of them going down to 40% over the next decade. I mean, that gives these industries tremendous competitive advantage and opportunity to grow in what is one of the world's fastest growing and most prosperous economies.
Yeah, indeed. Clearly good news for that Scottish whisky industry. There have been criticism, or there is criticism this afternoon, William, of this deal, not least of all around taxation, that Indian workers will be exempt from national insurance contributions. Now, that is a fair criticism, isn't it?
Well, as you know, business here is suffering considerably under the employer's national insurance contribution hike, which came in last month. And we want to see no additional taxes on business here. We need to look at the detail of what's been agreed. The government's also committed to do a full impact assessment on this agreement. So we want to see what the details of that are and what the implications for employment overall are here in the UK.
OK, William Bain, live for there in Glasgow. On that India trade deal, thank you very much indeed. And let's return to the other big developing story this afternoon, and that, of course, is there at the White House, where we are expecting Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, to meet with Donald Trump at the White House in what could be quite a testy meeting, potentially, between the two leaders this afternoon. Mr. Trump certainly seeming pretty robust, maybe even aggressive on social media, as we await the Canadian Prime Minister to arrive at the West Wing, at the Oval Office. Let's bring in James Matthews, who's there for us. James, and as always with these things, they don't necessarily run on time, but we are expecting Mr. Carney relatively soon.
Yeah, hi, Darren. Very soon indeed. In fact, I'm looking just on the drive. The gates are open. Convoy appears to be at the gate. He's been in Blair House, which is just across the road. So it's a short journey. Albeit, I suppose it will feel a long drive to meet the noisy neighbour. I mean, this is a grudge match, make no mistake about that. If we needed a reminder, there was a Truth Social post from Donald Trump as I see the convoy having sat there for some seconds. The convoy now on its way. I did wonder if he was going to be stuck at the gate for any length of time, because Trump, he's not rolled out the red carpet here, and we're seeing as I look at the West Wing, Donald Trump ready to meet Mr. Carney. They've spoken a couple of times on the phone. They have met. According to the Canadians, they met in 2017 at a financial summit in Hamburg. The White House doesn't remember that, so it clearly passed Donald Trump by. But right now, he is meeting the man who has accused the American president of posing an existential threat to his country. I was at Mark Carney's victory rally in Ottawa when he won the election. He said Donald Trump is trying to break us.
No
Well,
words
there you go,
there,
all
Mark.
very cordial on the doorstep. No answer to those shouted questions. But Darren, there will be questions inside the Oval Office. That's where they are headed now for that set piece, side by side, sitting down. And, well, we've seen some spectacles in that environment, haven't we? Volodymyr Zelensky and the rest. I do wonder what response we will have to questions like, do you still want to annex Canada? Why have you imposed punitive tariffs on your neighbour? Do you pose an existential threat to Canada? Do you threaten to undermine the Canadian economy to such an extent that it faces a looming recession? All those questions, it will be interesting from both men to hear their answers and the kind of dynamic that creates in the room, because they are central questions to the relationship between this pair and between neighbours, interconnected neighbours, much dependent on each other on a whole number of levels, but particularly economically and particularly for Canada. 75% of its exports travel south across the border. Donald Trump, in his Truth Social post just a few minutes ago, seeking to frame the terms of this meeting and I suppose to introduce that framing into the public realm, talking about the one question that he had, the question of consequence, as he put it. Why is America subsidizing Canada by $200 billion a year, in addition to giving them free military protection and many other things? He says, a lot more in that particular post. It doesn't mention, interestingly or not, the business of annexing Canada, so that appears not to be in his mind when it comes to social media today in the context of this meeting. But clearly, this has the potential for a bruising encounter when it comes to a route forward on the economy, on business, and being good neighbours that are mutually productive.
James, what's fascinating here, of course, is that Mark Carney effectively got elected because of Donald Trump. He was key to that election victory. You covered it, of course. But now he's Prime Minister. That relationship, or he's Prime Minister going to be for the years to come, that relationship is crucial in that the United States could cause, if it wanted to, a lot of damage to Canada, which Mark Carney is very aware of.
Yeah. I mean, you had a situation in Canada where in January, Trudeau was stepping down, having led an unpopular government. He was an unpopular Prime Minister. He'd been in office for close to 10 years. And the election effectively was cut and dried. The Conservatives were 25 points ahead. Then Trump took office. Trudeau stepped down, and that combination turned the election on its axis. The Liberals, Carney's Liberal Party, surged ahead, and he benefited from nationalist sentiment, a sense of patriotism and unity that was prompted amongst Canadians by Donald Trump's threats on tariffs and on annexation. Quite how Carney sees a route forward will be the question for this meeting, questions that he will face from journalists in the room. It's due to start pretty soon.
OK, James Matthews, live for us there at the White House. Thank you very much indeed. That is it from me on Business Live for today. We're back, of course, tomorrow. Up next, it is Saima with NewsHour at 5 o'clock here on Sky News.